My name is Janessa, and I'm 35 years old. For the past decade, I've built my career in hospitality management while balancing my marriage to Richard, a marketing executive with a talent for persuasion. We had what everyone called the perfect life until I discovered his betrayal in the most unexpected way. Little did Richard know that when he booked the presidential suite at the Grand Lux Hotel for him and his mistress, he'd find me there not as his wife, but as the hotel's new chairwoman. If you want to know how I caught my husband cheating, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, hit that like button, and subscribe to follow my journey. I met Richard during my junior year of college. We were both business majors with big dreams and ambition that seemed perfectly aligned. He was charismatic and determined with a smile that could charm anyone in the room. I was focused and detail-oriented, balancing multiple jobs while maintaining my GPA. We complemented each other perfectly. Our first meeting happened in a marketing strategy class. Richard presented a brilliant campaign that impressed not just our professor, but everyone in the room. I remember thinking he was the kind of person who would go far in life. After class, he approached me to compliment the questions I'd asked during his presentation. That led to coffee, which turned into dinner, which evolved into studying together almost every night. 6 months later, we were inseparable. Richard understood my drive in a way no one else had before. He didn't feel threatened by my ambition. Instead, he encouraged it, or at least that's what I thought at the time. We dated for 2 years before he proposed. It was a fairy tale moment at the rooftop restaurant where we'd had our first official date. He'd arranged everything: perfectly private dining area, string quartet champagne, and a speech that made everyone around us tear up. When he got down on one knee, I didn't hesitate to say yes. Our wedding was the social event of the season among our friend group. We held it at a beautiful vineyard with 200 guests. I wore a custom-designed gown, and Richard looked handsome in his tuxedo. Everyone commented on what a perfect couple we were, how our ambition and love would take us far. After graduation, Richard quickly landed a position at Sullivan & Brooks, one of the most prestigious marketing firms in the country. His natural charm and sharp business acumen made him a rising star. Within 3 years, he was leading his own team and bringing in major clients. I took a slightly different path, starting in hotel management. I loved the fast-paced environment, the attention to detail required, and the satisfaction of creating perfect experiences for guests. I started as an assistant manager at a boutique hotel, learning every aspect of the business from the ground up. Our early married years were filled with excitement and growth. We purchased our first home, a gorgeous colonial with enough room for the family we planned to have someday. We travelled when we could, collecting memories in Paris, Tokyo, and Buenos Aires. Our social media feeds were filled with smiling photos and captions about gratitude and happiness. But as Richard's career accelerated, I found myself relocating more frequently than I would have liked. Every time he received a promotion or opportunity in a new city, I would resign from my position and find something new. It wasn't ideal for my career progression, but I believed in supporting my husband's success. Each time I told myself it was temporary, that eventually we would settle somewhere permanently and I could build my own career path without interruption. By our 5th anniversary, Richard was a marketing director with a 6-figure salary and an expense account. We had upgraded to a larger home in an exclusive neighborhood. We hosted dinner parties for his colleagues and clients where I played the role of the perfect hostess. Our life looked immaculate from the outside, but around our 8th anniversary, things began to shift. Richard started working later hours. At first, it was just an hour or 2 here and there. Then it became regular, not coming home until 9 or 10 at night. His explanation was always the same: important clients, crucial deadlines, company restructuring that required extra attention. I believed him because I had no reason not to. Richard had always been ambitious, and I understood the demands of building a successful career. When he'd come home exhausted and go straight to bed without dinner or conversation, I attributed it to his dedication to providing us with the lifestyle we enjoyed. Our communication gradually diminished. The long conversations we used to have over dinner became brief exchanges about schedules and household matters. The weekend getaways became less frequent, then stopped altogether. Richard was always too busy or too tired to maintain the traditions that had once been the foundation of our relationship. I tried everything to rekindle our connection. I planned surprise date nights, only to have Richard cancel at the last minute due to urgent work matters. I bought new lingerie that remained unworn in my drawer. I suggested marriage counselling, which Richard dismissed as unnecessary. "We're fine, Janessa," he would say. "Just going through a busy period. It'll calm down soon." But it never calmed down. Instead, other small changes began to appear. Richard started going to the gym regularly, something he'd never prioritised before. He updated his wardrobe with more expensive suits and watches. He became protective of his phone, taking it with him, even for short trips to the bathroom. These were all signs I should have recognised, but I was too busy making excuses for him. There were other hints too. Mysterious text notifications that he would quickly dismiss. Sudden business trips announced with minimal notice. Receipts for restaurants we had never visited together. But each time my suspicions rose, I pushed them back down. I didn't want to be that wife, insecure, paranoid, distrusting. I told myself I was overthinking, that Richard was just busy with work, that everything was fine. Our last anniversary was perhaps the clearest sign that something was wrong. I had made reservations at an exclusive restaurant months in advance. Richard arrived 45 minutes late, checked his phone throughout dinner, and seemed completely disinterested in the thoughtful gift I had selected for him, a first-edition book by his favourite author that had taken me months to track down. He gave me a generic necklace that didn't match anything I owned or would ever wear. It felt as though he had asked his assistant to pick up something for the wife on the way to the office. That night, as Richard slept soundly beside me, I stared at the ceiling and wondered what had happened to the man who once wrote me love notes and knew exactly how I took my coffee. I wondered if this distance was temporary or if it was the new normal for our marriage. Most of all, I wondered if I would ever be enough for him again. Little did I know that things were about to change dramatically, but not in the way I had hoped. My career had always taken a back seat to Richard's relocating whenever his advancement required it. I had built a solid reputation in hotel management, but the constant moves prevented me from reaching the executive level I knew I was capable of. I had made peace with this arrangement, believing that marriage meant compromise and that my time would eventually come. That Tuesday morning started like any other. I was reviewing applications for a management position at the mid-sized hotel where I worked as operations director when my phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognise. "Is this Janessa Williams?" a polished female voice asked when I answered. "Yes, this is she," I replied, still focused on the resume in front of me. "My name is Vivian Montgomery, head of the Executive Search Committee for Grand Lux Hotels. Your name has been mentioned repeatedly as someone we should speak with about an opening in our organisation." The Grand Lux chain was legendary in the hospitality industry, 5-star properties in major cities worldwide known for unprecedented luxury and impeccable service. Working for them was the dream of anyone in hotel management. "I'm flattered, Ms. Montgomery, but I'm not currently looking for new opportunities," I said, automatically. Richard's position at Sullivan & Brooks was stable, and we had just renewed our lease for another year. Moving now seemed impractical. "I understand, but I think you'll want to hear about this particular opportunity," she persisted. "We're looking for someone to join our executive leadership team initially, with a path to becoming chairwoman within 6 months. The current chairman is retiring and has personally recommended we bring in fresh perspectives." I nearly dropped my phone. This wasn't just an executive position, it was potentially the top leadership role at one of the world's most prestigious hotel chains. It was the kind of opportunity that comes once in a lifetime, if at all. Would you be open to an initial conversation, no commitment, just an exploration of possibilities? Vivian continued. I agreed to a call the following day, my mind racing with possibilities and concerns. That evening, I called my best friend Sophia for advice. Are you kidding me? This is the Grand Lux Janessa, Sophia exclaimed when I told her. You have to at least talk to them. But what about Richard? His position at Sullivan and Brooks is going well. Moving would disrupt everything we've built here. I countered, already feeling the familiar pull of prioritizing his career over mine. Sophia's tone became serious. Janessa, how many times have you relocated for Richard's career? How many promising positions have you given up? You've supported his advancement for years. Don't you think it's time he supported yours? Her words struck a chord. Over the past decade, I had moved 4 times for Richard's career, each time restarting my own professional journey. I had never complained because I believed in being a supportive partner, but I couldn't deny the cost to my own ambitions. The next day, my call with Vivian turned into a 2-hour conversation about my experience vision for luxury hospitality and ideas for modernizing the Grand Lux experience while maintaining its heritage. By the end, she invited me for a formal interview at their headquarters the following week. That night, I shared the news with Richard over dinner, trying to contain my excitement. They're considering me for an executive position that could lead to becoming chairwoman, I explained, watching his face carefully. Richard's reaction was measured. That sounds interesting, he said, taking a sip of wine. But isn't the Grand Lux headquartered in Boston? That's a big move. It would be a big opportunity too, I pointed out. The kind that could define my career. Of course, and I'm proud of you for being considered, he said, his tone not quite matching his words. Just think about the logistics. My position here is going really well. The Palmer account could lead to a significant promotion next quarter. I nodded, familiar with the subtle redirection. I understand. I haven't made any decisions. It's just an interview. Over the next 3 weeks, I progressed through 5 increasingly intensive interviews. Each round, the position became more defined and more significant. What had started as an executive role with potential for advancement was now explicitly offered as the chairwoman position following a brief transition period with the retiring chairman. The board explained their reasoning. The Grand Lux brand needed revitalization while honoring its traditional values. They wanted someone with fresh perspectives, who also understood the foundations of exceptional hospitality. My track record of modernizing operations while enhancing guest experiences at my previous positions had impressed them. As the possibility became more real, so did my internal conflict. This was the opportunity of a lifetime, one that I had worked toward my entire career, often from the shadows of Richard's success. But accepting would mean asking Richard to consider relocating for me, something I had done for him multiple times without question. When the formal offer arrived, the compensation package was beyond anything I had imagined, 3 times my current salary, with equity options, performance bonuses, and perks that reflected the position's prestige. The role would make me more successful than Richard in terms of both influence and financial compensation, a reversal of our marriage's established dynamic. I scheduled a dinner at Richard's favourite restaurant to discuss the offer. I wanted to present it as our decision, something we would consider together as equal partners in our marriage. They've offered me the chairwoman position, I told him after we had ordered, starting with a transition period working alongside the current chairman. Full takeover within 6 months. Richard's fork paused midway to his mouth. Chairwoman, not just an executive position. I nodded, sliding the offer letter across the table. Richard scanned it, his eyebrows rising at the compensation figures. This is significant, he admitted. But Boston Janessa, my entire network is here. The Palmer account, There are excellent marketing firms in Boston, I pointed out. With your experience and client list, you'd be highly sought after. A flash of something concern crossed his face before he composed himself. Of course, it's just a lot to consider. Can I have some time to think about it? That conversation was followed by several days of increasingly tense discussions. Richard suggested I negotiate for a remote position. When I explained that leading a global hotel chain required a physical presence at headquarters, he proposed a long-distance arrangement where we would see each other on weekends. Neither option felt right for our marriage. Finally, after a particularly heated discussion, Richard sighed deeply. "If this is what you really want, then I suppose we can make it work," he conceded, though his tone suggested he was making an enormous sacrifice. 2 weeks later, I accepted the position. Richard agreed to work remotely initially, while exploring opportunities in Boston. We found a beautiful apartment in Back Bay, and I threw myself into preparing for my new role. My first days at Grand Lux were exhilarating and exhausting. The outgoing chairman, Walter Kingsley, was a hospitality legend who had built the chain into what it was today. He was generous with his knowledge, introducing me to key stakeholders and sharing insights accumulated over 40 years in the industry. The leadership team welcomed me warmly, though not without reservation. I was younger than most of them, and my appointment had been unexpected. I knew I would need to earn their trust through actions rather than words. I immersed myself in learning every aspect of the operation, often working 14-hour days. I visited our flagship properties, met with department heads, reviewed financial statements, and began formulating plans for subtle modernization while preserving the brand's storied elegance. Richard, meanwhile, seemed to be adjusting to Boston. He found a co-working space near our apartment and maintained his existing client relationships remotely. When I would come home late, exhausted but fulfilled, he would already be in bed or sometimes still out networking. I was too consumed with mastering my new role to notice how infrequently we saw each other or how vague his explanations for his absences had become. As Walter prepared for his retirement party, he pulled me aside. "You're ready, Janessa," he said, his voice carrying the weight of experience. "The board made the right choice. Trust your instincts and remember that luxury isn't just about thread counts and marble bathrooms, it's about making people feel valued and special." I took his words to heart, honoured by his confidence, and determined to live up to the legacy he had created. As I accepted the symbolic key to the Grand Lux empire at his retirement gala, I felt a profound sense of achievement and responsibility. What I couldn't know then was that this professional triumph was about to collide with a devastating personal betrayal. The first hint came 3 months into my new position at Grand Lux. I was doing laundry one Sunday afternoon, a rare moment of normalcy in my now hectic schedule, when I found a crumpled receipt in Richard's pants pocket. It was from Tiffany & Co., dated 2 weeks earlier for an amount that made my eyes widen. The purchase was for a platinum bracelet with diamonds. My birthday had passed without any jewellery from Richard. Our anniversary was months away. I stood in our laundry room, the receipt clutched in my hand, trying to rationalise this discovery. Perhaps it was for his mother or a thank you gift for a colleague who had helped him transition to Boston. Richard had always been generous with gifts for business relationships. I placed the receipt on his desk without mentioning it, waiting to see if he would bring it up. He never did, and no bracelet ever appeared. A week later, I was sitting beside Richard on the couch when a text notification lit up his phone screen. The preview showed a message from someone named Amanda. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow." Same time. Before I could process what I'd read, Richard snatched up his phone and quickly dismissed the notification. "Work stuff," he said casually, but there was a tension in his voice I hadn't heard before. "Who's Amanda?" I asked, striving for a neutral tone. "New client," he replied without looking up from his screen. "Financial services firm, big potential." I nodded, trying to ignore the knot forming in my stomach. Richard had always handled the financial services sector, so this explanation was plausible. Yet something about his reaction felt off too quick, too practiced. The following week, Richard's behaviour became increasingly suspicious. He started taking calls in another room, his voice lowered. He created a password for his phone, something he had never done in our entire relationship. When I asked about it casually, he claimed it was a new company security requirement, but I noticed he entered it shielding the screen from my view. His work hours became unpredictable. Some nights, he was home for dinner, attentive and affectionate like the Richard I had married. Other nights he would text that he was stuck with clients and would be very late. On those nights, he would shower immediately upon returning home, even if it was after midnight. I tried to dismiss my growing suspicions. We were both adapting to new circumstances. My demanding position, his remote work arrangement, the new city, it was natural to experience some disconnection during such transitions. At least, that's what I told myself. The situation escalated when my friend Sophia came to Boston for a conference. We met for dinner at an upscale restaurant downtown, catching up over wine and shared appetizers. Midway through our meal, Sophia's expression changed as she looked over my shoulder toward the entrance. "Isn't that Richard?" she asked, her voice tight. I turned to see my husband escorting a young woman to a table in a private corner of the restaurant. She was stunning, tall and elegant, with confidence in every movement. Richard's hand rested on the small of her back in a gesture of intimacy that was unmistakable. He was smiling at her in a way I hadn't seen directed at me in months. Before I could decide whether to approach them, they were seated and hidden from view by a decorative partition. Sophia reached across the table to squeeze my hand. "It might be innocent," she offered, but her tone suggested she didn't believe it. I forced myself to finish dinner, my food tasteless and my laughter hollow. Afterward, I told Sophia I would confront Richard at home rather than create a scene at the restaurant. She hugged me tightly before we parted, making me promise to call her afterward. When Richard came home that night, I was waiting in the living room. "How was your day?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. "Productive," he replied, loosening his tie. "Meetings with potential clients. Nothing exciting. Anyone I know," I pressed. "Just business contacts." "You'd be bored by the details," he deflected. "How was your dinner with Sophia?" "Interesting," I said carefully. "We went to Maison Laurent." I watched his face for a reaction, but Richard was an excellent marketing executive for a reason. His expression revealed nothing. "Nice place. Good choice. You've been there for client meetings," he said smoothly. "Their private dining rooms are perfect for confidential discussions." I considered pushing further, mentioning that I'd seen him, but something held me back. Without proof, beyond seeing them enter the restaurant, any accusation would be easily dismissed. I needed more information before confronting him directly. The next day, I decided to surprise Richard at his co-working space during lunch. I brought his favourite sandwiches as a pretense, but my real purpose was to establish whether he was actually working where he claimed to be. When I arrived, the receptionist greeted me warmly. "You must be Richard's wife, he's mentioned you." "Is he in today?" I asked casually. "Actually, he left about an hour ago," she replied. "Said he had an off-site meeting and might not be back today." My heart sank, but I maintained my composure. "Of course. I should have texted first. I'll just leave this with you," I said, handing her the lunch bag. That evening, Richard returned home around 7, claiming he'd been at his workspace all day. When I mentioned stopping by with lunch, he barely missed a beat. "Oh, that was you. They told me someone had dropped something off, but didn't say it was you. I stepped out briefly for coffee with a potential client." The lies were becoming more frequent and more elaborate. I found myself analysing every word he said, looking for inconsistencies. This wasn't the marriage I wanted, one built on suspicion and deception. The final confirmation came when I was folding laundry again and noticed an unfamiliar scent on Richard's shirt collar, a distinctive perfume I didn't wear. It was faint but unmistakable and impossible to explain away as a business encounter. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay beside Richard, listening to his even breathing, and wondered how long this had been happening. Was it a recent development born from the stress of our relocation, or had it been going on longer, perhaps even before my job offer? In the morning, I confronted him directly. "Is there someone else, Richard?" His denial was immediate and vehement. "What are you talking about? Of course not." "Then explain the perfume on your shirts, the late nights, the password on your phone." Richard's expression hardened. "This is what I was afraid of. This new job is making you paranoid, Janessa. The stress is affecting you." "This isn't about my job," I insisted. "Something has changed between us." "Nothing has changed except your priorities," he countered. "You're working constantly, coming home exhausted, and now you're inventing problems that don't exist. Maybe you should consider whether this position is worth what it's doing to our marriage." His deflection was skillful, turning my valid concerns into evidence of my failings rather than his. The conversation ended in a stalemate, with Richard storming out to give me time to reconsider my accusations. I went to work that day with a heavy heart, doubting myself despite the evidence before me. Was I becoming paranoid? Was the pressure of my new role causing me to see problems where none existed? These questions plagued me as I tried to focus on my responsibilities at Grand Lux. But deep down, I knew the truth. I just needed irrefutable proof, both for Richard and for myself. The answer came unexpectedly during a routine security briefing at the Grand Lux flagship hotel in Boston. As the chairwoman, I had implemented monthly updates on security protocols and systems across all properties, ensuring our guests' safety and privacy remained paramount. Marcus Jenkins, our head of security, was walking me through recent upgrades to our reservation system. "We've enhanced the VIP monitoring protocols," he explained as we sat in the security office surrounded by monitors. "Now we can flag high-profile guests or potentially problematic situations before they arrive, allowing for discreet preparation." "Show me how it works." I requested, genuinely interested in the operational improvements. Marcus pulled up the dashboard for upcoming VIP arrivals. "We categorize by celebrity status, government officials, repeat luxury guests, and potential security concerns," he explained, clicking through various filters. "Each category has specific protocols." I nodded, appreciating the thoroughness of the system. "And what constitutes a luxury guest designation?" "Presidential or royal suite bookings, guests with specific high-end requirements, or those spending above a certain threshold," Marcus explained, bringing up the weekend's upcoming luxury arrivals. That's when I saw it, a reservation for the presidential suite at our Boston property for the coming weekend. The name on the reservation, Richard Williams, my husband. My breath caught in my throat, but years of hospitality training helped me maintain my composure. "Can you show me the details of that reservation?" I asked, pointing to the screen, hoping my voice sounded steady. Marcus clicked on the booking. "Presidential suite for 2 nights, champagne service upon arrival, dinner reservations at our restaurant both evenings, spa treatments scheduled." He looked up. "Anything specific you'd like me to note for this guest?" "How many guests?" I managed to ask. Marcus checked the reservation. 2 adults. No special requests beyond the standard presidential suite amenities. 2 adults. For a weekend when Richard had told me he would be flying to Chicago for meetings with a potential major client. Every detail meticulously planned, the luxury suite champagne dinner spa treatments. This wasn't a hasty arrangement. This was a carefully orchestrated romantic getaway. "Is everything all right, Ms. Williams?" Marcus asked, noticing my prolonged silence. I forced a smile. "Yes, fine. That guest is actually my husband. He's planning a surprise." The lie came easily, a shield to protect my dignity in that moment. Marcus nodded, obviously pleased. "Would you like us to arrange anything special for the occasion?" "No," I said quickly. "He's put thought into the planning. Let's let him have his moment." Another lie to buy myself time to process this betrayal. The rest of the security briefing passed in a blur. I nodded at appropriate moments and asked relevant questions on autopilot, while my mind raced with the implications of what I'd discovered. When the meeting ended, I returned to my office and closed the door, finally allowing the emotions to surface. Tears came first hot and angry, followed by a wave of nausea so intense I had to sit with my head between my knees. The evidence was undeniable now. My husband was planning a weekend tryst at my own hotel, apparently oblivious to the fact that as chairwoman I would have access to this information. Once the initial shock subsided, I called Sophia. She answered on the second ring. "How are you holding up?" she asked, immediately concerned. "He's cheating," I said flatly. "I have proof now." I explained what I'd discovered, my voice surprisingly calm despite the hurricane of emotions inside me. Sophia listened without interrupting, offering only soft sounds of support. "What are you going to do?" she asked when I finished. "I don't know yet," I admitted. Part of me wants to confront him immediately, but another part wants to understand the full extent of this before I do. "Whatever you decide, I'm here," Sophia assured me. "Do you want me to come to Boston?" "Not yet," I decided. "Let me figure out my next steps first." After hanging up, I sat at my desk staring at the wall, trying to process this new reality. 10 years of marriage, countless sacrifices for Richard's career, and this was how he repaid my support. With betrayal in the very industry I had dedicated my life to. I opened my laptop and checked our joint credit card statements, searching for patterns I had previously overlooked. There they were, charges at restaurants I had never visited, boutique purchases that had never appeared in our home hotel bookings in cities where Richard had claimed to be staying with friends during business trips. The evidence of his infidelity was spread across months of statements hidden in plain sight, because I had been too trusting to look closely. With shaking hands, I opened our shared laptop at home that evening. Richard rarely used it, preferring his work computer, but occasionally he would check personal email from it. I felt a momentary twinge of guilt at invading his privacy, but it quickly dissipated. He had already shattered the trust between us. It didn't take long to find what I was looking for. Richard had created a separate email account I didn't know about, but had forgotten to log out of it on the shared browser. The inbox was filled with exchanges between him and someone named Amanda Peterson. The emails contained everything from mundane check-ins to explicit messages that made my stomach turn. The earliest email was dated 6 months ago, before my job offer before our move to Boston. This wasn't a recent development sparked by relocation stress. This had been happening right under my nose while I was supporting his career and compromising my own. From the emails, I learned that Amanda was an account executive at one of Richard's client companies, 15 years younger than him, ambitious and impressed by his position and influence. Their relationship had begun during a business conference, accelerating quickly from professional admiration to an affair. What hurt the most wasn't the physical betrayal, though. That was painful enough. It was the intimacy in their exchanges, inside jokes, pet names, discussions about their future. Richard had created a parallel relationship while maintaining the facade of our marriage. The final email confirmed my worst fears. It detailed their upcoming weekend at the best hotel in Boston, promising relaxation, luxury, and uninterrupted time together. Richard had even mentioned that I would be completely occupied with work commitments that weekend, ensuring they wouldn't be disturbed. I closed the laptop and sat in the darkness of our living room, a strange calm settling over me. The uncertainty was gone, replaced by the clarity of undeniable truth. My marriage had been a lie. Perhaps not always, but certainly in recent months. As I sat there, my professional training kicked in. As a hotel executive, I had managed countless crises with calm efficiency. I could approach this betrayal the same way, not with impulsive emotion, but with strategic clarity. Richard had chosen my hotel, my domain, for his infidelity. Perhaps it was time he learned exactly who he was dealing with. I arrived at my office early the next morning with a clear mind and a plan forming. This wasn't just about catching Richard in the act, it was about reclaiming my power and dignity in a situation where I had been deeply wronged. The first person I sought out was my executive assistant Tara, who had become not just a colleague but a trusted confidant since I took the chairwoman position. I closed my office door before speaking. "I need to discuss something personal that may impact operations this weekend," I began. Tara's expression turned serious. "Of course. How can I help?" I took a deep breath. "My husband has made a reservation at our Boston property for the weekend. He's bringing someone who isn't me." I stated it factually without emotion, though it cost me considerable effort. To her credit, Tara didn't show shock or pity. "I see. What do you need from me?" "I don't want special treatment for them, no upgrades, no complimentary amenities beyond what the reservation includes. I also don't want staff to know he's my husband. Not yet." She nodded, making notes. "And will you be confronting them?" "Yes," I said with newfound determination, "but on my terms when I'm ready." Rather than confronting Richard immediately, I decided to let events unfold naturally. I wanted to see just how far he would take this deception. That evening, he packed an overnight bag while I pretended to work on my laptop. "So you'll be in Chicago until Sunday evening?" I asked casually. "Yes, meetings all day, Friday and Saturday morning. Then some client entertainment," he replied smoothly. "Don't wait up on Sunday, my flight gets in late." "Good luck with the meetings," I said, marvelling at how easily the lies came to him now. Richard kissed my cheek before leaving. "Try not to work too hard while I'm gone," he said, with what seemed like genuine concern. "You've been so stressed lately." The irony of his statement wasn't lost on me. After he left, I called Marcus in security. "I need to discuss a sensitive matter regarding my husband's reservation," I explained. "This is strictly confidential." I explained that I suspected my husband was being unfaithful and would be bringing someone to the hotel. Without going into personal details, I requested discreet surveillance of common areas and notification when they arrived. "We can monitor their movements in public spaces without intruding on privacy," Marcus confirmed. "Just tell me what you need to know." "Their arrival time, dining locations, any special requests," I listed. "And please ensure this stays between us." Friday morning arrived and I went to work as usual, though nothing about this day felt normal. I had arranged for a business trip in my calendar, telling my team I would be unavailable but reachable by phone for emergencies. In reality, I would be in my private office at the hotel monitoring the situation. At 4:37 p.m., Marcus texted me, "Targets arrived, checking in now." I watched through the security feed as Richard and a beautiful young woman I recognized from social media photos as Amanda entered our lobby. They were dressed casually but expensively, Richard's hand possessively on her lower back. They were laughing about something completely at ease with their deception. The check-in process went smoothly, with Richard using his business credit card, the one I helped pay off each month. They were escorted to the presidential suite where the standard champagne awaited them. Within an hour, Richard called room service to order more champagne and a selection of appetizers. I watched the security feed as the attendant delivered their order, Richard signing the bill with a generous tip, another charge that would ultimately appear on our joint statement. They spent the evening enjoying our hotel's amenities, drinks, at the rooftop bar, dinner at our Michelin-starred restaurant, a midnight swim in the private pool attached to their suite. All captured in discreet security footage, all charged to the room. I stayed in my office reviewing the evidence and finalizing my plan. This wasn't a hasty revenge plot. This was a carefully considered reclamation of my dignity. I would confront them, but not as a betrayed wife caught in an emotional outburst. I would approach this as the chairwoman of Grand Lux Hotel's professional, composed, and in complete control. Saturday morning, they ordered breakfast in bed. Later, they left for their scheduled couples massage at our spa, followed by lunch at the garden terrace. Every moment was another confirmation of Richard's betrayal, another nail in the coffin of our marriage. By Saturday evening, I had seen enough. They had returned to their suite after dinner, ordering a bottle of our most expensive champagne and chocolate-covered strawberries. The stage was perfectly set for my entrance. I took extra care with my appearance, choosing a tailored suit that represented my position. I applied my makeup flawlessly, styled my hair with precision. The woman who would walk into that suite wasn't just Richard's wife, she was Janessa Williams, chairwoman of Grand Lux Hotels. I informed Marcus of my plan to enter the suite, assuring him it was a personal matter that I would handle professionally. He provided me with a master key card, no questions asked. As I rode the elevator to the top floor, I felt remarkably calm. The hurt and betrayal were still there, but they had transformed into something else, a steely resolve to take control of my narrative. I stood outside the presidential suite door for a moment, listening to the muffled sounds of laughter and music inside. Then I slid my key card into the lock, watching as the light turned green. It was time to show Richard exactly who he had betrayed. I opened the door quietly and stepped into the foyer of the presidential suite. Classical music played softly from the integrated sound system, mingling with the sound of conversation and laughter from the main living area. The scent of our signature Grand Lux floral arrangement permeated the air, along with the distinctive notes of expensive champagne. Taking a deep breath, I walked confidently through the short hallway into the main room. Richard sat on the plush sofa, his arm around a young woman in a silk robe. They were sipping champagne and feeding each other chocolate-covered strawberries, looking like a perfect advertisement for luxury romance. It took them a moment to register my presence. Richard noticed me first, his expression transforming from relaxed happiness to shock so complete it would have been comical in any other circumstance. "Janessa!" he gasped, champagne glass slipping from his fingers onto the white carpet. "What? How are you?" The woman beside him stiffened, looking between us with growing alarm. "Richard, who is this?" She pulled her robe tighter around herself, instantly aware that something was terribly wrong. I remained in the doorway, my posture, straight expression neutral. "Good evening," I said calmly. "I'm Janessa Williams." Richard stood up abruptly, spilling more champagne. "Janessa, this isn't— I can explain." "I'm sure you can," I replied evenly. "You've always been excellent at explanations." The young woman had gone pale. "Williams, as in, you're related to Richard?" "You could say that," I answered, my eyes never leaving Richard's face. "I'm his wife," she gasped, turning to Richard with horror. "You're married. You told me you were divorced." She stood up and backed away from him. "You said your divorce was finalized months ago." Richard's face contorted with desperation as he looked between us. "Amanda, please, it's complicated." "Save it," she snapped, gathering her scattered belongings. "I don't date married men. I'm not that person." She looked at me, genuine regret in her eyes. "I'm so sorry. I had no idea." I nodded, believing her. "There's another surprise," I added, finally allowing myself a small, controlled smile. "I'm not just Richard's wife, I'm also the chairwoman of this hotel chain." Richard's face drained of colour as the full implications hit him. Amanda froze in the middle of collecting her things, her expression shifting from shock to something like reluctant admiration. "This is your hotel?" she asked. "All Grand Lux properties fall under my purview," I confirmed, "including this one." Amanda let out a humourless laugh. "Well, that's just perfect." She grabbed her overnight bag and headed for the bedroom. "I'll need 5 minutes to dress, and then I'm gone." As she disappeared into the bedroom, Richard found his voice. "Janessa, please, we need to talk about this privately." "We're beyond privacy," I replied. "You forfeited that right when you brought your girlfriend to my hotel." "I made a mistake. he said, lowering his voice to an urgent whisper. A terrible mistake, but 10 years of marriage deserves more than this. We can work through this. 10 years of marriage deserved more than infidelity, I corrected him. It deserved honesty and respect, neither of which you've shown me. Richard ran his hands through his hair, a gesture I once found endearing. It didn't mean anything. Amanda is just, don't you dare! I cut him off, my voice sharp for the first time. Don't diminish her to try to save yourself. At least have the decency to acknowledge that you deliberately pursued a relationship with her. Amanda emerged from the bedroom fully dressed, her face set in grim determination. I think it's best if I leave now, she said, addressing me rather than Richard. Again, I'm truly sorry. Had I known, I believe you, I said sincerely. Safe travels home, Amanda, she nodded, and walked toward the door, pausing briefly beside Richard. You're pathetic, she told him quietly, and you just lost someone far better than you deserve. After she left, a heavy silence filled the suite. Richard loosened his tie, visibly struggling to regain control of the situation. How did you find out? He finally asked. Does it matter? The reservation was under your name at my hotel. Did you think I wouldn't know? I shook my head at his carelessness. But this wasn't your first mistake. I've known something was wrong for months. Richard sank onto the sofa. I never meant to hurt you. And yet you made dozens of conscious choices that led directly to that outcome, I pointed out. Each lie, each secret meeting, each gift and dinner and hotel room. I got caught up in something. The attention, the admiration. He trailed off, realizing how pathetic it sounded. You couldn't handle my success. I said the truth, crystallizing as I spoke it. When I became more successful than you needed to find someone who would look up to you, who would make you feel powerful again. Richard's expression confirmed my theory before he could deny it. I've already contacted my lawyer. I continued, maintaining my composure. You'll be hearing from her next week. Until then, you should find somewhere else to stay. You're throwing away 10 years over one mistake. Richard attempted a last-ditch appeal to our history. This wasn't one mistake. It was hundreds of deliberate choices over at least 6 months, I corrected him. And you're the one who threw it away, Richard, not me. I'm just acknowledging what's already broken. I moved toward the door, then turned back. The room is paid for until tomorrow. Checkout is at noon. After that, I expect you to remove your things from our apartment while I'm at work on Monday. Richard stood a final attempt at salvaging his dignity. Janessa, please. Security will escort you out tomorrow, I said firmly. Goodbye, Richard. As I closed the door behind me, I heard the distinct sound of something shattering against the wall. Richard's famous composure had finally cracked. The security team was waiting discreetly in the hallway as I had arranged. Everything all right, Ms. Williams? Marcus asked with professional concern. Yes, thank you, I replied. Mr. Williams will be checking out tomorrow. Please ensure he leaves without incident. Of course. Marcus nodded, understanding the subtext and the charges. Process everything as normal, I instructed. He should pay for the full experience. As I rode the elevator down to my office, the professional facade I had maintained began to crumble. My hands shook as the reality of what had just happened, what I had just done, sank in. 10 years of marriage effectively ended in a luxury hotel suite. A relationship I had invested my heart and soul into shattered beyond repair. When I reached my office, I locked the door behind me and finally allowed myself to break down. The tears came in waves, grief and anger washing over me in equal measure. I cried for the marriage I had believed in, for the years of support I had provided, for the future we had planned together. Most of all, I cried for the woman who had diminished herself to elevate a man who didn't deserve her sacrifice. But even in my darkest moment, I knew I had done the right thing. I had faced betrayal with dignity. I had reclaimed my power, and somehow I would find a way forward from here. The weeks following my confrontation with Richard were some of the most challenging of my life. After the initial shock wore off, the full weight of what had happened descended on me. 10 years of marriage dissolved in a single weekend. A shared life separated into his and hers with clinical efficiency. When I returned to our apartment that Sunday evening, I half expected to find Richard waiting, armed with explanations and apologies. Instead, I found emptiness. He had come and gone, taking only his personal belongings. On the kitchen counter sat his key and wedding ring, no note accompanying them. Even in ending our marriage, Richard chose the path of least confrontation. That first night alone, I sat on the floor of our bedroom now, just my bedroom, and sobbed until my throat was raw and my eyes burned. This wasn't the dignified chairwoman who had confronted her cheating husband. This was just Janessa, a woman whose heart had been shattered. I called Sophia, who answered immediately despite the late hour. "He's gone," was all I could say before breaking down again. "I'm booking a flight right now," she responded without hesitation. "I'll be there tomorrow." True to her word, Sophia arrived the next afternoon. She took one look at me, still in yesterday's clothes, eyes swollen from crying, and wrapped me in a fierce hug. "You're going to get through this," she promised. "Not today, not tomorrow, but eventually." Sophia stayed for a week, helping me navigate the immediate aftermath. She sat beside me during the first call with my divorce attorney, took notes when I couldn't focus, and ensured I ate something each day. Most importantly, she listened without judgment as I cycled through grief rage and occasional moments of relief. "I feel like I'm going crazy," I confessed one evening. "One minute I hate him so much I can barely breathe, and the next I'm wondering if I made a mistake, if we could have fixed things." "That's normal," Sophia assured me. "You're mourning not just what was, but what you thought would be." Richard's attempts to contact me began 3 days after the confrontation. First came text messages expressing regret and requesting a chance to explain. When those went unanswered, emails followed longer and increasingly desperate. I forwarded them all to my attorney without reading beyond the subject lines. A week later, a massive arrangement of my favourite flowers arrived at my office, with a card pleading for a conversation. I donated the flowers to the hospital across the street and shredded the card. Through it all, I maintained my professional responsibilities at Grand Lux with a composure that surprised even me. During meetings, site visits, and conference calls, I was the focused, innovative chairwoman everyone expected. Only in private did I allow myself to acknowledge the pain. Walter Kingsley, my predecessor, who had stayed on as a consultant during my transition, noticed the change in me despite my efforts to conceal it. After a particularly tense executive meeting where I had been more curt than usual, he asked me to join him for coffee in his office. "Personal tragedy has a way of either destroying us or transforming us," he said, after I reluctantly shared what had happened. "The key is channeling that pain into something constructive." Taking his advice, I threw myself into my work with renewed intensity. I accelerated plans to modernize our booking systems, revamped our customer loyalty program, and initiated a comprehensive staff training program focused on personalized service. My pain became fuel for innovation, my sleepless nights opportunities to refine strategies. The divorce proceedings progressed with the same efficiency I brought to my professional life. Richard initially contested the terms, arguing that his sacrifices for my career earlier in our marriage entitled him to a larger settlement. My attorney countered with evidence of his infidelity and financial deception, and his resistance quickly crumbled. 6 weeks after the hotel confrontation, I received a surprising email from Amanda. She requested a brief meeting if I was willing. Against my attorney's advice, I agreed, curious about what Richard's mistress could possibly want to say to me. We met at a small cafe far from both our workplaces. Amanda arrived first, visibly nervous but composed. "Thank you for agreeing to see me," she began. "I know this is unconventional. Life rarely follows convention." I replied, studying the woman my husband had chosen over me. In daylight, without the shock of discovery, I could see she was intelligent and professional, not so different from how I had been at her age. I wanted to apologize properly, she said, and to make sure you know I truly had no idea Richard was married. He told me he was divorced when we met at a conference 6 months ago. He even had a story about how his ex-wife had moved to California after the split. I nodded, believing her. Richard has always been a convincing storyteller. When I found out the truth, she continued, I was horrified. I've seen my mother go through the pain of being cheated on. I would never knowingly put another woman through that. I appreciate your honesty, I said sincerely. Richard's deception hurt us both in different ways. Amanda hesitated before continuing. There's something else you should know. After that night, Richard tried to contact me, claiming he was leaving you, that he wanted to be with me. Her expression hardened. I told him never to contact me again. I also informed his company about his unethical behavior with a client. I couldn't help but smile slightly at that. How did they respond? They've launched an investigation, she said. Based on what I've heard, his position is in jeopardy. We parted on surprisingly cordial terms, two women united by the experience of Richard's betrayal rather than divided by it. As I watched Amanda leave, I realized I felt no anger toward her, only a strange sense of solidarity. 3 months after the confrontation, I finally felt strong enough to begin reclaiming my personal life. I sold the apartment that contained too many memories and purchased a modern loft in a different neighborhood. The new space reflected my aesthetic alone, sleek, bright, uncluttered by compromise. I resumed activities I had abandoned during my marriage, taking weekend pottery classes, joining a women's hiking group, attending symphony performances. With each recovered passion, I reconnected with parts of myself that had been submerged in the identity of Richard's wife. Sophia visited regularly, bringing with her a rotating cast of friends who supplied wine, laughter, and occasionally gentle nudges toward dating again. Not yet, I would tell them. I'm still getting to know myself. That spring, I attended an industry gala alone for the first time since becoming chairwoman. As I circulated through the crowd in a gown I had chosen to please only myself, I spotted Richard across the room. He was with a new date, obviously trying to project the image of a man who had moved on. Our eyes met briefly, and in that moment I realized something profound. I felt nothing. No anger, no grief, no lingering attachment. Richard had become simply a person I once knew, a chapter in my story, rather than its defining plot. Later that evening, I accepted an award for the Grand Lux's remarkable growth under my leadership. Standing at the podium, looking out at my industry peers, I felt a sense of wholeness that had nothing to do with being anyone's wife or partner. I had rebuilt not just my career, but myself. The final divorce papers arrived a week later. As I signed my name officially ending my marriage, I felt an unexpected sense of gratitude. Richard's betrayal had been painful beyond measure, but it had also been the catalyst for my transformation. Without it, I might have continued dimming my light to accommodate his ego, never discovering my full potential. When the Grand Lux opened its newest property in Singapore that fall, I stood at the ribbon-cutting ceremony as a woman fully in command of her life, professionally successful, emotionally resilient, and genuinely happy. The journey from betrayed wife to empowered individual had been excruciating at times, but standing there I knew without doubt that I had emerged stronger on the other side. My story isn't unique. Countless women have faced betrayal and found themselves forced to rebuild from the ashes of relationships they believed would last forever. What makes each story different is not the betrayal itself, but how we choose to respond to it. I chose to reclaim my power, to prioritize my worth, and to believe that I deserved better than deception. That choice, more than any professional achievement or financial success, is what truly transformed my life. Today, When I look in the mirror, I no longer see the woman who dimmed her ambitions to support a husband who couldn't celebrate her success. Instead, I see someone who faced devastating betrayal with dignity and emerged with a deeper understanding of her own strength. If you're facing betrayal or struggling to rebuild after a relationship's end, remember this: the pain is real and deserves to be honored, but it doesn't define you. Your response to it, the life you choose to create in its aftermath, is what truly matters. Have you ever had to rebuild your life after betrayal? How did you find the strength to move forward? Share your story in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more stories of resilience and transformation. And remember, sometimes the most painful endings lead to the most beautiful beginnings. Thank you for listening to my journey.